Thanks everybody for coming along tonight's presentation with the EV Association of Northern Ireland. I am Derek Riley, your host for the night. We'll be kicking off in a minute or two. Some of you may recognize me from EV Review Ireland, a YouTube channel that I run. And I'm also proud to say I'm the newest member of EV Association Northern Ireland as well. Paid member as well, not one of those free members. I want to contribute to the cause. There's a rumor that Mark goes away to Barbados every summer, but that's a joke.
I wish.
So we have agenda tonight. It is very simple. I'll introduce our guest speaker, John from ESB. Then there's going to be a presentation, and then we've got a question and answer session at the end. We've got some pre-submitted questions, and they're fairly well-rounded, so we were happy with that. If you feel that we haven't covered something, there will obviously be specifics, but I know that John's presentation will cover a lot of it, so just hold fire, write down your question, and then as we may open up the questions at the end for any additional stuff, but we feel that we've got a very well-rounded set of questions and also with John's presentation. So thanks everybody for being here tonight. There's a lot of other things you could be doing on a Tuesday evening, but your passion for electric vehicles and the infrastructure in Northern Ireland is very important. And we have people outside of the jurisdiction as well. I know that Ewan McTurk is here, Dr. Ewan McTurk, apologies, from Plug Life Television. So people are interested in this part of the world. It's beautiful. We want to get around it, driving our electric vehicles, and we know that part of that solution will be John and the team there at ESB ecars. Gentlemen, I think we're going to kick on, will we? I'm getting some nods and thumbs up. So as I said, my name is Derek Riley, and I'll be your host for this evening. You won't see too much of me just at the start and at the end. Tonight's presentation is in collaboration with ESB ecars, and we've got John Byrne here, who's going to give us a presentation and then answer all the tough questions towards the end. I think John will have everything covered. Knew he was coming on tonight, and there's been a lot of activity in Northern Ireland over the last couple of days and weeks, just to take the edge off, John. But we'll hand over to you, and best of luck with the presentation. We'll come back to you at the end for the questions and answers.
Derek, thanks a million, and thanks to you for hosting, and thanks for the invite from EVA, and I'm delighted to be here. As Derek sort of said, yeah, I have a presentation which largely explains what ESB ecars does, what we're doing in each of the jurisdictions. That's very light. Where I've tried to focus the presentation tonight is specifically on the Northern Ireland territory, what we've done over the late summer and autumn, recognising some of the issues, but also, and I think most specifically, what we're doing under the Levelling Up Fund, which is funding we obtained from the British government in November just past, what the progress has been and what the plans are for the future. A lot of the members here were also very kind enough certainly to participate in our customer survey, which we did a number of months ago. I'm conscious that some of you may not have seen the output of that, but we are very grateful for the input. You would be very surprised at how relevant a lot of that feedback is and how much stock is given to that feedback in terms of our business decisions. So if you have participated, very, very much appreciated. And I have just one or two slides on some of the stats, I guess, some of what we're doing well or what we're perceived to be doing well, and obviously areas for improvement. What I'll do is I'll share my screen, if that's okay, Derek. I'll start here with the presentation, only about a dozen slides. I'll get through them and allow plenty of time at the far end then for a Q&A, if that's okay. So I hope you can see this and hear me. So yeah, so LUF is the Levelling Up Fund. So this is the upgrade the EV charging network in Northern Ireland. I'm John Byrne. I should have introduced myself at the start. I'm the head of ecars. I've been the head of ecars for going on a year now. Before that, I headed up the smart metering project for ESB networks. And I've held various other sort of managerial jobs and regulation jobs prior to that. So just a little bit of background. So ecars is currently the largest EV charge point operator on the island of Ireland. We are part of the ESB umbrella group. We were established back in 2009. At that time, when we were set up, really the reason for setting up ecars was to establish a nationwide network of charge points, so that people who were considering buying ecars would never be too far from a charger. So its initial sort of raison d'etre was to establish that nationwide infrastructure. It's largely made up of fast chargers, as you would call them up here, with quite a selection of rapid chargers. It's a fully interoperable network right across the island, and we've worked hard to make sure that is the case. So the infrastructure you would use north or south of the border, whatever jurisdiction you're in, would be very familiar to you. We have the eCar Connect app, which runs right across all of our jurisdictions. And as I said, all of that is with the intent to make the network as interoperable as possible. It's just in terms of scale of the network, 1,350 charge points on the island of Ireland at the minute. That's obviously a growing network as we add to the network on a sort of a weekly or monthly basis. What I've also tried to illustrate, or what I also want to bring to your attention, is we have a significant presence right across GB in London, Birmingham and Coventry. And I've just 2 slides on that. This one is in the West Midlands area. So this is the area we're most active in at the minute. So approximately 18 months ago, we won a competitive process to install 197 chargers in total in Birmingham. So Birmingham as a city have a clean air zone, and we're their partners to implement an EV charging infrastructure. 200 chargers in total. At the time, it was going to be a 50-50 split, but as consumer tastes have changed and the requirements have changed, we've started to see that ratio change. So more rapid chargers are being installed now with Birmingham City Council, and a lesser focus on fast. The initial chargers went live last June, so about 7 months ago. So we've about 20% of the project done, or about 40 chargers in the ground now at this stage. And the remaining sort of will come over the next 2 years. So between now and next year, finish out around September, October of 2023. Coventry is a much smaller rollout, and it's a project that's finished about 2 years ago. We've 39 rapid chargers on the ground there in Coventry, and hasn't been quite the focus from the City Council on the clean air zones. So we haven't seen quite the usage that we intended in Coventry. The other area which we're very active in, and probably our largest jurisdiction outside the island of Ireland, is London City. And here we are working with TfL, Transport for London, and we're one of their, they have 4 framework providers, I should say, under framework contracts. We've already installed 140 rapid chargers right throughout London. That number increases all the time. We put in, I think, 16 new rapid chargers in the borough of Westminster in December. So that number is growing quite considerably. TfL are now looking to release lands for hub locations throughout the city. So that appears to be their next iteration of rolling out EV charging for the city. One of our sort of flagship sites, certainly in London, is the Glass Yard, and that's the bottom right-hand picture. And that's an 8-vehicle fast charging hub, which we launched last September. That really is the most futuristic hub that we've built anywhere. Just to dwell on it, the entire canopy is PV enabled, so it's made up of PV cells. There's battery storage on site, and all of the structural supports that you can see, the 2 main structural supports, are in fact large. They're sustainably resourced from forests up in Scandinavia, Sweden, to be particular about it. And that charger, actually, the usage on that flagship site has risen 400% since we opened it last September. So it's been hugely successful, and we actually have a delegation from Ireland going over to visit it next Wednesday. The way the contracts are called off in London is that TfL provide the enabling infrastructure. So in many cases, some of the early grid connection works, or if there are site works, that work is provided by TfL. So they bring the site up to a certain level of completion where it's handed over to the CPO or the charge point operators like ourselves. ecars in these cases then delivers the remaining works and infrastructures. So all of the electrical connection work, obviously the chargers themselves, etc. They are all added in, and then the site goes live and appears on our back-end system. That's two of the jurisdictions. Obviously, the other jurisdiction is in the Republic of Ireland. Here, we're undertaking a fairly major and substantial investment program in conjunction with the Irish government. So the Irish government has released funds to various projects under their Climate Action Fund, or CAF. We were successful in that application, and we obtained 10 million euros of Irish government funding to upgrade and expand the existing network. In addition to the 10 million we got from the Irish government, ESB group added 10 million. So collectively, it's a 20 million euro investment program. Here, what we've done is we focused the initial, it's a 3-year program, I should say, and they're the 3 areas of scope. So to replace 520 of the 1,000 standard charge points, they would be classed as fast charge points. Upgrade 52 standard chargers to fast or rapid chargers, and then to deliver 52 high-powered charge hubs. They're the hubs that can charge multiple EVs simultaneously. Where we are on this program is all of the first facet of the program is now done. So we had quite a concern about reliability up to 2 or 3 years ago. The reliability of the network was quite low, so the initial focus of the network was to improve the reliability of the assets in the ground. So all of those standard or fast charging points are now replaced. We have 36 of those 52 fast chargers now. Sorry, this is an Irish slide, so a fast 50 kilowatt charger you would recognize as a rapid charger in the Northern Ireland territory. 52 in total to do, 36 done, and I'm holding the last 16 because of new technology basically that we have worked on with one of our providers, one of our framework providers, and I'll talk to that when I come to the Northern Ireland specific slides. And then the last piece is the high-powered charging hubs. Now these, as you probably know, can charge multiple EVs simultaneously, and they're high-powered charging hubs. So what that means is that all of the chargers are minimally rated at 150 kilowatts. So we have mostly 150 kilowatt units, some 200 kilowatt units. So they allow for a very rapid deployment of energy into cars. I have a little bit sort of additional information here in this slide. They'll give you 100 kilometers of range in as little as 6 minutes. Now that is very, very much car dependent, and how full your battery is at a time, and on what voltage your car is, what architecture is in your car. But the chargers themselves have the capability of giving you 100 kilometers of range in that kind of time. We did 15 of these hubs last year. So they range, the smallest hubs we do are 3 spots, 3 simultaneous spots. So they would typically have one high-powered charging hub, or charger, I should say, with 150 kilowatt unit with a rapid beside it, right up to a tier 1 hub, which would be 4 high-powered chargers capable of charging 8 cars simultaneously. At the moment, we have 4 hubs currently under construction. Geographically speaking, the closest one would probably be Monaghan, and we have 12 sites in various pre-construction phases. And I have a slide which I'm going to spend a few minutes on in a couple of slides time, just to explain to everyone on this call just the process of trying to get a charger in the ground. So ultimately our ambition here is to deliver 52 sites between this year and next year. So effectively that will mean that the existing number of hubs, 15, will double to 30 or 32 hubs by the end of December this year. I mentioned at the outset our customer survey, and I do want to express our deep gratitude to everyone who took the time to respond. We got nearly 11,000 pieces of individual feedback, so there were options to provide typed or written feedback as part of the customer survey, and between ROI and NI we got nearly 11,000 pieces of feedback. Some of the high level sort of points, the majority there feel that the network has improved over the last 12 months. 3/4 of you find our eCar Connect app useful, but there was quite a bit of feedback on the app and how it could be improved. Not surprisingly, 1/3 of people changed driving habits during COVID, We saw that on our usage figures, which we track on a monthly basis. Nearly 70% are satisfied with customer support channels, in particular the call center. And it seemed to be the support channel which got the highest levels of satisfaction. 71% own EVs which are 3 years old or newer, and again that's not surprising. And I think Mark McCall had some very good stats yesterday at the EV task force, particularly concerning the number of new EVs on the system in Northern Ireland. 78% have a home charger. That figure has not deviated in 3 years, so it would appear that the majority of people who are buying EVs still have access to driveways or someplace to put a home charger. And for those who have a home charger, just over 60% charge mostly at home and then use the public network to top up. Again, that's slightly gone up from 58%. So it does appear that there's a shift towards more and more charging at home. 65% are within 5K of an ESB charger. Now that somewhat conflicts with our own information. Our own information is that based on sort of everywhere on the island of Ireland, you're never more than 35 kilometers from an ESB charger, but we reckon this 65% is due to the kind of the population centres, and more people in those main population centres are buying EVs. Not surprisingly, the majority of people want to see more fast and rapid chargers on the network, and again that's called out quite clearly. The overstay fee is something that we asked specifically about. One, about the introduction of an overstay fee, and two, whether 45-minute threshold was sufficient. 3/4 of people supported the overstay fee, and that is something that I'll talk to later with regard to etiquette at the chargers. And the final point here was that 70% believe that ESB offers value. Again, might be swayed by the fact that the network is free to charge here in Northern Ireland. But again, we can talk to that later. I know there are some pre-submitted questions in that space. What I've done is I've sort of tried to get just in a nutshell, in a quick nutshell, and in 2 minutes provide a synopsis of what was liked and what's areas for improvement. Again, what was liked was the eCar Connect app and the live information. Notwithstanding that, it's also, as you can see, quite clearly called out as an area for improvement. And we have plans to revamp that eCar Connect app in the first 4 months, in the first 6 months of this year, I beg your pardon, to take account of the feedback that we've gotten from this survey and from the sort of day-to-day use, and in fact what we see ourselves. The ease of use, the reliability of the network is something that's liked, as well as the helpful customer care with a focus on the customer contact center. We are seeing it starting to make a difference in terms of the new number of sort of rapid and high-powered chargers and hubs. But again, if you look down into the blue area, there is faster chargers and more hubs, please. That comes up religiously. The locations, good spread and access, reasonable good value, and branding easy to spot have all been delights. In terms of areas for improvement, what came out very strongly, and why I've sort of put it up here up front, is the Northern Ireland network improvement. That came as probably the predominant area for improvement right across the customer survey, and we weren't surprised one bit to get that, and hope now to move on to the slides to show you what we're doing in that space. User experience improvements on the eCar Connect app, better ways to search. I know what we can't do at the minute is search for the nearest rapid charger or the nearest fast charger, the nearest high power charger. That's certainly an improvement we're going to make. One of the other areas is the fact that when you start to search for a charger, it can bring up locations in the States, in Canada, and in fact anywhere in the world. So we want to narrow that down into the actual area where the consumer is based. Also, you can obviously log feedback or log a complaint on the app, but it's difficult to do so. And some of the feedback was people would like to see that brought a bit more centrally into the app. Faster chargers and more hubs, please. And that, I think, reflects a trend generally, not just here in Ireland, but right across all of the jurisdictions and across Europe that we've seen. A continual maintenance of high standards of customer care, and to help new drivers with the EV transition. And in fact, we always see a splurge, if you like, or a surge in calls to our contact center in times of high, in periods of high new vehicle registration. So we always see a spike around January, we always see a spike around July when new drivers are transitioning to EVs. We have produced a new document, and we have produced a whole marketing campaign around what that EV transition looks like, to try and take some of the jargon out of that transition to EVs. It's gone down very well, but certainly was seen as an area that we could improve in. That's the customer survey. And look, just before I come to Northern Ireland, this is a slide that I want to spend some time on, because I do get the feeling sometimes that not everyone sort of appreciates just how much effort and how many I's have to be dotted and T's have to be crossed before a charger goes into the ground. And it's just to give you an appreciation of what needs to happen to before you actually see a charger in front of your car. Typically, it starts with a data and analytics session, which is done based on our back-end system. That provides data on all of our chargers, time of use, how much energy is going through those chargers, what's the volume of transactions, what's the volume of energy being transferred, the traffic volumes, traffic routes, the availability of competition in the area, customer feedback. All of that feeds into our sort of data and analytics program to help identify sites. When we've identified an area, shall we say, that we would like to place a hub or additional chargers into, we have a business development team, which is our biggest team actually in ecars, and they set about interacting with the landlord or the individual or the government agency or the county council or whoever happens to own the land, to set about site negotiation and putting formal leases in place. Now, I can tell you all truthfully and candidly that is probably the longest part of this process, and some of those negotiations and legals around the leases can go on for an extended period of time, despite the fact that the landlord may be very willing to, or in fact very much want, EV chargers on their property. But assuming a site negotiation is successful and we've a lease signed, we then move into the area of grid connection and planning permission. So I have, I guess, taken a hub example here. So for any decent sized hub, whether that be anywhere in the island of Ireland or in GB, you need a substation and you need a grid connection. So that involves a lot of interaction with the distribution system operator to identify whether or not there is sufficient grid capacity at the location that you're looking for. If not, is there any available, whereby you might be able to deploy a hub, a smaller hub that can be scalable as more grid capacity comes on the system. Equally, planning permission is generally required for substations and larger hubs. So all of that feeds in. That typically is a 3 to 6 month process, depending on how big the grid connection is and whether or not there's objections lodged to the planning permission. After which you should, in theory, have planning permission and a grid connection in terms of a substation. Some of the other considerations then we have to give in no order are signage for that site. We try to advertise or certainly identify its location to drivers, both new and old. Accessibility is a very important feature for us. We've done a lot of work on accessibility over the last year. The hubs now all have the chargers located at ground level. All of the chargers in Northern Ireland, the new hubs you will see, or not the new hubs, the new fast chargers, they have all been installed such that a wheelchair bound person can easily reach and use both the connectors and the sockets, but also the control screen. Bay markings, bollards to prevent accidental damage, lighting and security, in particular the safety of women using our chargers and hubs location has become quite an issue over the last kind of 3 to 4 months, and one which we're happy to engage on and is factored right into our design process. Assuming you get all of that right, and everything goes your way, you then go about installing chargers. And we nearly have this area of the business commoditized now. So we have a number of frameworks with our equipment providers, our substations we're familiar with, and our distribution boards. So in many cases, the physical installation of chargers can be one of the easiest and smoothest aspects of the whole process, provided the sort of 8 or 9 steps previously have taken place. And then what a lot of people can forget, and I would say this in the Northern Ireland context, is around the repair and maintenance. So the chargers typically, on average, have about a 10-year life cycle or design life. And after that, as we're approaching 10 years, and certainly as they go over 10 years, you then start to see very, very significant drop-offs in reliability. So the repair and maintenance of chargers is very, very important from day one. ecars runs both a predictive and a corrective maintenance regime. So even if there are no faults reported to our customer center or are reported or whatever, we still visit the chargers multiple times a year to check that they're working correctly, that there's no damage to the connectors, there's no graffiti on them, and generally they work as they're supposed to. And then of course we've got the back office system. That's the system that connects into the eCar app, provides all the information in real time, allows you to stop and start to charge, charges you if you're in an area where you've got to pay for your charging as well. And also allows for that kind of full all-island interoperability. So look, I hope you found that piece useful, but it's not just as simple as sticking chargers in the ground, and there's a huge amount of other unseen work that goes into providing chargers. And I just wanted to make everyone give you an appreciation for what goes on kind of behind the scenes. Moving on now, the rest of my presentation is focused on Northern Ireland. So some of this you obviously already know, 170 odd chargers, part of that interoperable network. The chargers historically were installed as part of a consortium approach a decade ago. So that consortium was made up of ourselves, Northern Ireland Networks were in the consortium, Department for Infrastructure, some county councils, city councils were involved, some privateers were involved, the utility regulator of Northern Ireland was involved, and together they all contributed investment funding and installed that network approximately a decade ago. Now what's happened in the intervening time is some of the work was given to local charger providers. Those providers have gone out of business, and indeed where the chargers were manufactured by some of the more, I guess, reputable charger manufacturers that are still in business, they no longer support those chargers because they are, they're over a decade old. ESB, ecars has been operating the network for quite some time. We now own and operate the network in Northern Ireland. The reliability rate has been low, obviously for the reasons that I've outlined. We have been perpetually trying to keep the network operational to the best of our ability, but there are no spare parts, and where there are spare parts, and in one recent instance, we were quoted nearly 3/4 the price of a new charger to replace some of the internal electronic boards. So that all has resulted in a lower reliability rate than you've seen in our other jurisdictions, and that's largely due to the age of the assets. I'm kind of alluding back to the customer survey, but traditionally the 3 driver requirements have been for additional rapid chargers, for multi-vehicle hubs, and for improved reliability. Based on all of that, over last year, there was no funding available. So ESB ecars took it upon themselves to fund an interim investment program to replace a number of the chargers. We weren't sure whether a funding stream would be made available, and we were lucky enough that it was later in the year, but this decision was made at the start of the year as part of our budgetary process. We kicked off the works between late summer and autumn. We replaced 30 fast chargers. They were selected based on their condition, and we generally tried to take out the worst performing chargers and replace them. We did the work over the summer, as I said, in 2 tranches of 15 in each tranche. We took delivery of the first tranche of 15 and then a second tranche. What you may or may not know is that these chargers are somewhat bespoke to Northern Ireland. So you will see the lower half of the chargers actually contains the metering for NIE networks. In other jurisdictions, that's not required. So we had to go to a specialist engineering work and fabricate that lower part of the chargers to allow us to go ahead and do the replacement. We also committed to replacing 5 rapid chargers. That was for other reasons held up. But we 4 of those 5 rapid chargers done, and with a fair wind, I hope to get to the 5th one this week. All of that has seen the reliability metrics right across the networks improve. So at the worst, I was asked this question in front of the infrastructure committee, what was the worst kind of percentage point in terms of reliability for Northern Ireland network. Looking back over the last 18 months, it got as low as sort of 69, 70%. But with this investment, the average reliability rate is now 82 to 83%. The chargers that have been replaced typically run at between 98, 99% reliability. So the injection of funding and the replacement of those chargers has lifted the overall sort of reliability rate up about 13 or 14%. But if the entire network is replaced, we will be looking at a reliability rate in the order of 98, 99%, which is sort of standard in a modern network. So this brings me to the Levelling Up Fund, which is LUF. And in June of last year, we made an application to the Levelling Up Fund for funding to replace and to expand the entire Northern Ireland charging network. So we recognised that the network was at end of life condition. We recognised that, yes, we had put quite a substantial amount of our own investment into replacing the worst performing network, but we had an ambition to replace and to expand the entire charging network, and also to make it faster, obviously. So the good news for that was we submitted our application in June. It was an iterative process back and forth. There was multiple requests for additional information, and we were awarded 3.4 million in funding in November, and we sort of launched that and announced it in November. The scope, the high level scope is here. So when we look, there's 100 fast chargers remaining on the network, and that's the entire population. So every single fast charger that remains on the Northern Ireland network will be replaced. 7 of the rapid chargers will be replaced, and that's the entire population. So 5 will be done as part of the interim investment program. 7 will be replaced, and the remainder will be subsumed into hubs. The really good part of this project is the last 2 points, I believe, anyway. So in 20 fast locations, we will upgrade those locations to rapid chargers. And these, as I was explaining previously, will actually be 100 kilowatt rapid chargers. So we typically have installed rapid chargers of 50 kilowatts. They've been grand when there's been one user using them. However, we are trying to cater for an expansion in the numbers of EVs right across Northern Ireland. So these would be rapid chargers. They'd be 100 kilowatt rapid chargers. And if there's 2 cars using them, they'll both be able to charge at 50 kilowatts. So we're very happy with that piece of work. The other sort of news on that is actually we've placed the order for those rapid chargers. The hubs, again, hugely desired by the EV driving population. The funding is there to construct 5 new high power charging hubs. We've put in ostensibly at 200 kilowatts would be the charger size that we would use here. We are, and I did say at the outset that we do consider putting in 150s or 300s. So typically the 200s in the midpoint, and a lot of the speed or capacity of the chargers will depend on how much grid capacity is available at that location. You are probably also familiar that CHAdeMO as a connector type and standard was a lot more prevalent a decade ago than it is now. The CCS connector type has rapidly taken over. In fact, every car, with the exception of the current Nissan Leaf, and I think, but Derek will correct me, one or two of the Lexus, are the only cars now that use the CHAdeMO connector type. So all of the replacements chargers will either be entirely CCS or will have a CCS CHAdeMO option on the chargers. In addition to this, we will have the online reporting, the digital content creation, and the customer surveys. That's been a requirement for the Levelling Up Fund themselves. As you know, in near real time, we post any new locations that we've upgraded or changed or installed on Facebook and across our media channels. But you will also see it appearing on our sort of back-end system. So on our eCar Connect app, you'll be able to search for it. It'll appear in the search. It'll tell you whether it's in use and all that. And in terms of the duration of the project, it has already kicked off. And my next and final slide sort of, I'll give you an update on the status on what's been going on in the project. And it's due to conclude in August of next year. So it's quite in fact, it's a very short period of time to do that amount of work. My last slide then is we have 5 hubs to build. We have started commercial negotiations with more than 5 hubs. We've actually issued commercial terms and leases to 3 of the 5, and we're waiting to hear back on whether they're suitable. We have done our analytics to assess the best locations for the fast to rapid upgrades. So we have 16 of the 20 locations identified. I was in Belfast in the surrounding areas last week, on site myself, looking at the best options for those rapid upgrades. We've formally selected 5 of the 20 rapid locations. The first 5 are all located in that or around Belfast. We have engaged with NIE networks around grid capacity at each of these points now. So it's one of my ambitions anyway, that the rapid upgrades, that element of the program will be one of the first to be rolled out as part of the program. We have frameworks in place for all of the rapid and high power chargers, so we don't need to go through a full procurement process to get these chargers into Northern Ireland. All of the rapid chargers, so the 20 new locations and the 7 existing locations, they are all ordered for Northern Ireland now, and they're in the manufacturing queue from our charger providers. In terms of the fast charger specs, and I've shown again that the fast charger on the right to show the kind of 2-part process that they were. Because of the size of the order, the fast charger vendor has indicated that they will build a specific charger for Northern Ireland, a sort of a longer charger, which will be capable of housing all of the metering that's required, which we feel will be a better look, allow for better branding, and obviously provide less water ingress points. So we're due a delivery of the first prototype this week. It's due for delivery into the jurisdiction. The proposal is to install it at a location in Northern Ireland, commission it fully, and if that commissioning process is successful, if the manufacturing is successful, if generally the specs stand up, we will then place the order for the remaining 100 of these fast chargers. I guess the good news on fast chargers is the lead time is traditionally a lot shorter than rapid or high powered chargers. And then the final piece, and this has been ongoing since the project was announced, but has accelerated in recent times as we've identified sites, is the engagement with NIE networks regarding connections. So they are excellent to work with. We have found them very generous with their time, and certainly we've enjoyed working with them, but we've a long road left to travel. The like-for-like fast charger replacements are relatively straightforward from an electrical perspective, but all of the fast to rapid upgrades, and indeed the hubs in particular, require a lot of back and forth between ourselves and NIE networks. But look, like I said, we're meeting nearly on a weekly basis with regard to that. So look, I'm conscious I've talked for 40 minutes, and I do want to leave Derek and co some time, so I'll stop sharing now. But many thanks once again, and if there is any questions, absolutely happy to take them.
Your wish is my command, John. So I've got an initial 10 questions that we'll rapid fire through. You can be as detailed as you can in a minute. We'll start off, and your presentation has covered some of these, so I appreciate that we may be double jobbing, but I just want to get the questions out that people have asked. So question number one, can you give us an approximate date and timetable of the work to roll out the replacement chargers in your Northern Ireland network? I think in your last slide or the slide before that, you were saying it's between now and August of 2023. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. But there is a, I don't want to blame the chip issue, but you'll know yourself, the delivery of EVs, delivery of meters, delivery of chargers is all dependent on chips. We're expecting the first delivery of chargers to be probably late May, but more likely early June, based on the latest correspondence with the provider. And at that stage, we will be ready to break sod and commence immediately with the fast and rapid elements of the project.
Perfect.
The hubs themselves, obviously, they require planning and a more formal grid application process, as well as the whole leasing and negotiation with the landowners. So they typically take longer to install. But you're right, the end point of the project is scheduled for August next year.
And that's including the hubs that we're talking about, the 5, and 3 of those you're in contract has been passed over in stages. Yeah,
we've identified more locations than the 5. We're looking to see, can we actually build more generally, because of the requirement that's there. We have noticed I think on a pro rata basis, the number of EVs being sold in Northern Ireland, is greater than anywhere else at the minute, albeit off a low base. It's always been our ambition to try and stay ahead of the demand curve, and there's a clear demand for multi-vehicle sort of hubs, so we're trying to stay ahead of that as well.
Before we move on to the next question, John, if somebody is a site owner, what's the process? Reach out to yourself or reach out to, where do they reach out if they want to work with you on putting chargers in? They think it's a good location. You'll probably run the analytics on it.
Yeah, they can reach out to any one of the EVANI guys. They can reach out to me directly. In fact, you'd be staggered really by the amount of leads we get through that. Because people see or hear you on radio or TV, and they say, actually, I have a site, or I'd welcome them. Like a lot of forecourt owners actually want the EV charging now. They're starting to see sufficient numbers of EV on the roads to justify a partnership or an investment off their own bat in charging infrastructure.
Perfect. Next question. I hope we won't be stuck with 50 kilowatt rapids for another 10 years. What are the ESB plans to speed up the replacement of DC chargers here?
Yeah, so that's the latest tech that we have available is now this 100 kilowatt chargers. So the 50s that we have at the minute, we've been using for quite some time. We made a decision probably around last September, October, that we wouldn't replace 50s with 50s, and we wouldn't upgrade fast to rapids with 50s, and we would make the decision to go to 100s, largely because of the increased battery sizes. But also because it's just the latest technology available, and if 2 cars pull up, they're both capable simultaneously drawing 50 kilowatts, whereas opposed to now only 1 car can do that. So we're doubling the speed and doubling the capacity, and that feels like the right thing to do. And I did mention the CAF program in the Republic of Ireland, so I've deliberately held off on the last third of that until we can get those 100 kilowatts for precisely the same reason. The first 2/3 of that program used 50s, but we've seen the limitations of the 50 kilowatt network, and we're moving to 100 kilowatts now.
With the 50s that you're putting in Northern Ireland, we were chatting before everybody came in, do you envisage them being replaced with the 100s then sooner rather than later?
Yeah, in some locations they will be replaced. Those 50s that have gone in have been in response to just long-term issues at some sites, or short-term. I know Boucher Road suffered a kind of a catastrophic thing with the screen 2 weekends ago, I think it was. So it's a very busy site, obviously, and there's only a limited number of rapid chargers around. So we try to act as quick as we can. We don't have the 100s anywhere in the country or in GB yet, so we've ordered right throughout all of the 4 jurisdictions. So once they come in, you will start to see the 100s replace the 50s and the 22s that are there.
Thank you.
sorry, Derek, I'll just say just some of the points. Just one other point is that some of the sites that are going to the new rapids, they are sites that we put in the new fasts in over autumn. So they'll be coming out as well, unfortunately, but that's the price of progress.
Understand. On that reliability question, many chargers, even the new ones, seem to break down regularly. What brand new rapid chargers at the Show Road in Belfast failed on day one, for example? Are these just anomalies, or are we finding out the reasons why?
Yeah, no, it's an anomaly. That was we saw that very quick. The Shoreline one went offline, I think, the next day. That was a sort of a software issue that wasn't the correct sort of version of the firmware, I should say, wasn't uploaded into it. I'm getting technical. Normally what happens is in the factory, the latest version of the software is preloaded onto the chargers and then they're deployed on site. That didn't happen in the case of Shore Road. We got an opportunity to replace Shore Road at very short notice. We put it in and we had to replace the firmware sort of with the laptop, I think a day or two after, once we became aware of the problem. Okay. But no, typically those chargers will, if they have any difficulties at all, generally tend to happen fairly quickly, and after that we see it generally without damage through cars nudging off them or lightning. Actually, we had one lightning strike here a while ago. They generally go on well, and that's in the main what our predictive and our corrective maintenance sort of programs tend to weed out.
Okay. With the rapids, new rapids recently installed here, it seems somebody plugging in a CHAdeMO will knock out the CCS person already charging. There seemed to be a weighting towards CHAdeMO. Can this be reconfigured as to whoever's on is on, and whether it's CHAdeMO or not, the first in gets first served?
So that's the ultimate difficulty that I have with the 50 kilowatt chargers that exist, which is why, you know, we've taken the option to go with 50. With 100, sorry, that's a Freudian slip, to go with the hundreds. Two cars can come in and simultaneously charge at 50 with the new infrastructure. Some of the chargers will be replaced with CCS. Some of them will be replaced with CCS CHAdeMO, given as we go forward, the percentage of CHAdeMO drivers on the network will be ever smaller. So we are building a network to cater for a predominantly CCS driver population. And yes, two vehicles at one rapid will both be able to draw 50 kilowatts, and there won't be a scenario where one knocks off the other.
So we'll have to wait for the machine to be the charger to be upgraded before it's not going to be something that's going to happen to the existing 50 kilowatt ones.
So about 16, 18 weeks until the new equipment arrives.
With the 5 new charging hubs, how many 200 kilowatt chargers are going to be within those hubs?
So they'll all be, they all will have them.
Okay, so but as in the number of units, when we call, I know that's a contentious issue with regards to what is a hub. It'll be. So
the minimum size of hub that we're going to be putting in is a minimum 4-bay. So we won't have what we have in the Republic, which is a sort of a 3-bay mini hub. So all of them will have high-powered chargers and a minimum of 4 simultaneous parking bays. One of the proposals we've made to one of the kind of major landlords is in fact for an 8-bay charging hub with four 200s. As I said there, that might be then rated to a 4x150 or upgraded to 300s, depending on the grid capacity available. But we have made a commitment to both the governance of the board, really, of the project, and to the public and to all of the drivers, that none of the hub locations will have chargers with a capacity less than 150 kilowatts.
Okay, thank you very much. Where will these charging hubs be located, and when will they be up and running? I think you've kind of answered that, but somewhere in Northern Ireland, is that what we're saying?
No, I can be a little bit more specific without, I obviously, as I said, there are some commercials around this. Look, the reality is that there will be some on main trunk routes and motorway routes. There will be some in Belfast, and we have made 2 offers to landowners in Derry. Right? So there'll either be 1 or 2 in Derry. There'll definitely be some in Belfast, and then there'll be some on arterial routes around Northern Ireland as well.
Okay, thank you. Derry, London, Derry, but we won't get pulled into that. When will these charging hubs where will these charging hubs be located, and will they be up and running? I think we've covered that. When will ESB fill in the gaps on the north, south, east, west of Northern Ireland? West of the river, Ban, Omagh and Enniskillen all very badly catered for currently.
Yeah, that's a fair observation, and I'd agree with that. And I think one of the winning factors of the bid was that we wouldn't focus on just the highly populated or densely populated areas, but that this was a project which aimed to enhance the charging network right throughout the 6 counties. So in that regard, a number of the rapid chargers have been identified in Belfast, as I said. The remainder will be spread right throughout the 6 counties. And one of the hubs is, I don't know exactly where it will be, but it's likely to be either Omagh or Enniskillen. And we're, again, in, I would call them embryonic stage negotiations with landlords around where they will, or where they might be put. But certainly we recognise that there isn't high power charging hubs in either like Enniskillen or Omagh. Recognise that they are on routes up to Derry or Letterkenny or whatever, and the border area traditionally hasn't had a lot of rapid investment or hub investment, and we're trying to counteract that at the minute. But all of that would lead me to tell you that Enniskillen or Omagh will get a hub of some description.
Thank you. Folks, we're getting close to 8 o'clock. John, are you okay to extend a couple of minutes just so we get through the questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Take as long as you need.
Be careful what you wish for. Now, probably the one that's going to get the most contentious. Some people are happy with this and some people are not. What is the current timetable for the introduction of pay to charge at ESB networks in Northern Ireland? And I think we get to the stage when we're drivers and we'll be able to say, reminisce, I remember when the chargers were free and I remember when they weren't. John, this will ease up a lot of people leaving them there all day.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the big wins. In fact, there's an etiquette in Northern Ireland now which is not helpful. It's not conducive to EV owners, existing EV owners and drivers, or people who want to access the network. We have introduced. There's 2 components to this, and I'll talk maybe about the etiquette piece. One is around the overstay fee. So we have introduced it in other jurisdictions very, very successfully. So we see the majority of people who charge moving off the chargers after 45 minutes. I will point out that the overstay fee only applies to the rapid or the HPC network. So if and when all of the rapid chargers are going to be operating at 100 kilowatts and all of the HPC chargers will be operating at 150, 200 kilowatts. In 45 minutes, you will have more than sufficient capacity in your battery to send you on your way. It prevents people. In many areas, it's also free to park while you're in a charging bay. So the introduction of an overstay fee goes a long way to trying to alleviate that kind of behaviour or incorrect etiquette that's built up. You saw you would have seen. Hopefully I skipped through the slide, and there was a lot on it, I know, but something like 72% support the overstay fee. We specifically included that in the customer survey. So when pricing is introduced, I should say, in Northern Ireland, so too will the overstay fee to try and counteract some of that etiquette. The overstay fee itself is constantly under review in terms of the duration, how it's applied, and what rate is applied. In the greater scheme of things around the introduction of pricing, we have given a commitment that pricing will be introduced on Northern Ireland networks this year. Traditionally, what we've done is we've introduced pricing at certain levels, so rapid or high power charging, and roll that down into fast charging, depending on the jurisdiction. And the time gap between those introductions has varied. So it's very much a tailored or bespoke introduction for whatever territory we're introducing pricing. I can tell you we are going to do it this year. I've already given that commitment. We're currently in the process of introducing pricing in Birmingham, because like Northern Ireland, it's free to charge there, although it hasn't been free for a decade. And one of the other issues really is that we can't shoulder this load ourselves. A lot of people have to contribute to the transition to EVs. If we are not charging for our electricity, it does discourage others entering the market, and that's something obviously we want to see and to foster as well. So charging will be introduced. It will be fair. It will be very much aligned with existing charges. We have started doing some work on it already. And also the fact is it has been free for over a decade, but the number of EVs has risen by about 2,000 over the last 23 months, and it's a cost that can no longer be sort of borne, if you like, Derek. So yeah, charging will be introduced.
Charging and overstay fees this year, is that what you're saying, John? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's likely but not confirmed that it will start the rapid and the HPC charging, followed by the fast chargers.
Yeah, same as down in the Republic.
Yeah, that's how it was done before. I will point out that obviously the 45-minute overstay fee won't apply to the fast charging network. That still will, because I think you'll probably only get about 30 or 40 kilometers, 30 miles of range after 45 minutes on one of the fast chargers. So really for people who are park and ride, or people who leave their car charging overnight where they don't have their own driveway, that is not, that would be detrimental to those people who use the network in that way.
What we found in the Republic, as you're aware, John, even without the overstay fee on the AC chargers, once there's a cost to charging on them, that people usually move along within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
I know that Mark has a neighbour there that I won't say that all taxi drivers are like that, but that one of your closest AC chargers is used as a free top up for everybody. With regards, my last question before we will let everybody go would be having chargers in locations that don't have 24-hour access, and existing sites that don't have that, but also upcoming sites. Would that be a focus of making sure that people day or night can get in and charge their EV?
Without a shadow of a doubt, it's probably one of the go-no-go negotiation hurdles. So we are actually talking to two landowners at the minute who gate their premises. Certainly we would like to expand what we have there in Boucher Road, but as you know, that's gated. So what we don't count in a position where you cannot charge at night, where taxi drivers or people who want to charge at night can't be facilitated. So all of our rapids, so the 5 locations chosen for the rapid upgrades are all 24-hour access. The 3 hub sites that we have now issued terms to and we're in negotiation with, they all provide 24-hour access. We don't have any ambition whatsoever to install any hubs or rapid upgrades where they're blocked off for 8 or 10 hours a day.
John, we've got some questions that have come in live, and maybe the panel, or how would you like to do it, gentlemen?
Well, I suppose we've got a few minutes left. We're going to open the chat. We've only got a few minutes. We won't be able to answer all of the questions, but if I open the chat, if you have any particular burning questions, fire them into the chat. We'll try and pick 1 or 2 of those and go with that. So if you give me a second.
Thank you, Darren. While that's coming in, John, I won't waste this valuable time with you. How many AC sites will be converted to DC? Would you have that figured in mind, or what way it's?
Yeah, that's 20. That's what we call the faster rapids. So the AC they're all fasts, and the rapids are all a DC charger. So 20 in the first case. Like the funding that was provided was for the basic structure of the program. We have just launched our own recent strategy, which calls for several hundred new chargers in Northern Ireland. So I can see a point arising where a lot more than 20 will be upgraded. But in this first tranche, it's 20, and then we look for other options then on private sites, forecourts, retail parks, wherever good sites become available, there'll be options. But generally, our standard, our default offering will be 100 kilowatt rapid chargers going forward. We've got a preference for offering that to drivers, and we feel that drivers themselves have a preference for utilising that kind of infrastructure.
Perfect. With regards to parking bays and signage, I know that we had this question down in Dublin with Sir John Rogerson's Key. Signage, clamping for stopping icing, painting the bays green, is that a collaboration with yourselves and landowners, or do you take control of that in Northern Ireland, or what way does it work, John?
On the private sites, we paint the stuff ourselves as required. We've moved away in some areas from painting the the bay itself green, so it's just the outline with the EV sort of charging symbol. The green paint generally doesn't hold up to Irish weather for whatever reason, and it tends to deteriorate very, very rapidly. And we found that we were continually painting charging bays in the public arena. Then there, a lot of the enforcement falls to the local authorities. I met recently with a lot of the councils actually, and the governance of that, and the what's the word, the patrolling or whatever, the parking enforcement varies from council to council. Some share a resource to enforce their parking, others don't. Some villages and towns actually don't have any parking enforcement. It's just free to park. So it's a combination depending on where you are right across the territory.
Thank you. We've got some questions coming in the chat there, folks. I was wondering, I thought you covered everything in the questions and the presentation, John, but they are coming in. Do you have any plans for your app to support Android Auto or Apple Carplay so people can utilize it when they're on the road?
I don't have an answer to that at the minute, and that's genuinely because I just don't. No one's ever actually asked me that question before. If it's okay with you, what I'll do is I'll diary that question. I'll get an answer back into the committee, and they can answer that question for me. I'll do that in the next coming days, but I just don't have a straight answer to you this at the minute.
Thank you, John. Yeah, it makes sense. I think that the app providers is drives, so maybe they could do something with an integration there so that you're not on your phone when you're driving. Does ESB consider the current phone support adequate? Are you measuring wait times, and if so, do you think they're acceptable?
I guess I can answer this question by saying the 24/7 365 service is one that's, in all of the surveys we do, comes in really, really highly regarded. However, what I can tell you, and I said it in my own presentation, is that in January and in July, we generally tend to see a huge volume of calls coming in from new drivers and whatnot, which generally lengthens queues. In addition to that, we have changed prices in London recently. As I said, we're about, and have communicated the price introduction in Birmingham. They too drive calls into the call centre, and that can result in longer lead times. Generally, I am happy, but it is an area that we have identified that needs continuous improvement. So when there's more resources required, we generally tend to put them in. In one regard, the contract for a new provider is up at the minute. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the existing provider, but just over the period of sort of 3 or 4 years that they've been our partner here, that period has elapsed, the contract duration has elapsed. So we are about to enter into a new procurement, and part of that will be looking at betterment of the service that we provide currently. You're on mute there.
After 2 years, the lack of an executive has it zero impact on the rollout?
Sorry, I missed the first bit of the question.
Sorry, the lack of an executive, has that zero impact on the rollout of the, with regards to the rollout of the charging system?
It's perhaps it has. I think there's a myriad of reasons why, and the provision of a reliable public charging infrastructure certainly is one, and that's why we're so busy in the area now to try and rectify that and provide that assurance to new and to current drivers. Well, I think it's a factor of a lot of things. Like Northern Ireland hadn't got an energy strategy up to recently. It's only recently that an EV infrastructure sort of action plan and a task force has been set up. So, steps are being taken by the government to try and rectify the place they're in. They recognise, I guess, that climate change affects us all. There's a lot of work to do. So things are improving, but I don't think I could solely blame the executive for the sort of the low number of EVs in the north. I'd say it's a contributing factor, but no one factor is directly responsible. And equally, no one institution or no one body is going to be able to shoulder the load themselves. It's going to take a lot of people carrying the can together.
John, I think you should go into politics. These are very good answers. Somebody has put in a question. They've seen a car parking for 8 to 9.5 hours at a fast charger. Do we monitor this behavior, and can you as the provider, because somebody has activated it, can you take action? I suppose that's going to be fees and charges and overstay fees.
Yeah, it's difficult to do at the minute. In part, there was, because it was free to charge, there was a lot of cards given out which weren't linked to people or linked to accounts. They were just a general sort of tap and go card. But obviously when we introduce pricing, they will no longer work. They'll be taken off the system. People will have to apply for their own card, set up their account details and all the rest. And like that, I would hope that, well, you'd want to have some absolutely huge battery to be able to sit on a fast charger for 8 or 9 hours and continue to take a charge. But so your bill, your charging bill, will continue to rise. So we hope, as I said before, that and a combination of the overstay fee will alleviate that kind of behaviour. And I have seen it, and I've heard lots of sort of horror stories. It's not something we like to hear about. It's not something we like to see. We're determined to do our bit, really, to try and kind of just remove it from the system.
Understand. Have you talked about to large hospitals and trusts regarding charging going forward, or is that a commercial conversation with the likes of yourselves and or other charger providers?
If I'm truthful, I haven't had any conversations personally with any hospitals. Now, that's not to say my BD or business development team haven't had the same conversations. I just directly haven't been involved with any. We are talking to a number of multiples though, that have multiple sites around, whether they be councils or private sort of landlords, that just have multiple sort of sites. Obviously there's multiples of fuel providers as well, which they can be good and bad. A lot of them have their own desire to do their own thing when the time sort of presents itself. So you can do small sort of pilots with them, but typically it's hard to access their entire network. But yeah, we are in contact with a number of kind of multiple site providers, and we see it as it can be a way to unlock, multiple sites simultaneously.
Very good. Topical recently, but I think always was topical, lighting, safety for women at chargers, etc. What are ESB ecars having to do about this?
Yeah, it is very topical, and we get a lot of questions, quite well, and more so recently, and rightly so. I guess traditionally the chargers have been located in some out of the way locations because it was seen that a charger wasn't something that was desired by the general sort of members of the public. But what we have started to see now is people actually want charging. They want to advertise the fact that they have charging. So chargers we're allowed or get more traction with being able to put chargers in more prominent positions. In all of our new hubs, there will be full lighting, and we traditionally try to locate them close to amenities where there is shops, or they're in forecourts, or where you're visible. Some of the difficulties obviously are on the legacy sites where these sites have been put in. We have undertaken a program of analysis to photograph all of the existing sites. That was done as part of the replacement over the summer, and that will continue as part of this levelling up fund. Where lighting is an issue, we work with the local authorities if they're the provider to provide additional lighting on sites, and it's all about generally trying to improve how safe people feel at the chargers. So I'm not here to claim that we have it solved or have it cracked. We haven't. It's an ongoing piece of work. As long as we'll be here, I'm sure there'll be additional precautions we have to introduce. But in the round, I can tell you that for all of our new infrastructure, the lighting, the amenities are far better than they were. And for the existing assets, we are working with our other providers and in local authority cases with them to get better lighting into some of the sites.
Last question. Public sector chargers, are they being replaced as well in this rollout?
Public sector chargers.
Is that ones that weren't put in by yourselves back in the traditionally, or you're just updating your own ones? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that is that publicly located chargers like on street locations or whatever, or we're not replacing any.
John, as part of the original ecars, there was a range of public sector chargers put into public sector buildings and areas like Stormont and some hospitals. They're in the same position as the fast chargers, the 22s and the rest of the place, but they use a different card. It's still an ESB ecars card, but it's they typically have not been well served up to this point. So I suppose the question is, there's a small number of those, but are they being replaced in the rollout?
The ambition is to replace all of our chargers, and there's money there to replace absolutely every single one of them. We've placed orders to replace every single one of them. The number might be small, but if they are if there are stock, the plan is to replace them. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Thanks everybody that has been on tonight. We've ran a couple of minutes over, but hopefully you found it worthwhile. We've had over 60 people at the peak, but people have been coming and going. As I said, it's a good way of informing ourselves as to what's happening and to understand the process. John, we'd like to thank you for your time out of working hours to come and meet with the members tonight. And people can see exactly what's happening and the plan that's coming down the line. As you mentioned, if people have site locations or thinking that they know places that would be good for chargers, get in touch with any of the committee members or reach out to John directly. That's all from me. Darren or Mark, would you like to say anything in closing remarks?
Just thanks to all the members who turned up tonight, and thanks to John and indeed to yourself there. Very professional as always.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.